Hello everyone, I'm Sunny from Susan's family. Today, I'm going to teach you how to make a Nordic Aesthetics Series Season Forest Intarsia blanket. This blanket consists of 4 sections: the main part, the border, the embroidery, and the lining. The main part includes 14 types of fabric pieces. Some fabric pieces come in different quantities of color schemes to make the knitting more convenient. Each column of fabric pieces is finished separately. For each column, you only need to cast on once. The remaining piece of fabric is continued directly from last row of the previous piece. Each fabric piece is joined end to end. After finishing a column of fabric pieces, bind off. Once all fabric pieces are completed, you will sew together the long sides between adjacent columns of fabric pieces. Then work the border around the entire blanket. Finally, we will embroider in the corresponding positions. Lastly, sew in the lining on the wrong side. Now, let me demonstrate the specific knitting technique. First, we will learn how to work the main body. I'll use the first column of fabric pieces as an example to explain the knitting method. Let's look at the pattern chart for the fabric piece. A vertical line in the diagram represents a knit stitch to prevent the chart from looking too dense. The empty squares also represent knit stitches. From the right side, it will appear as knit stitches texture. It's essentially the garter stitch pattern. Let's take a look at this pattern. Here is the color scheme for the first fabric piece A in this column. Each square represents one stitch. The chart uses different colored squares to distinguish between corresponding colors. Here, A1 indicates working according to the color 1. Watch me demonstrate the specific knitting technique to make it clearer for everyone. I'm using cotton yarn for demonstration. The color using here can be random. To facilitate the explanation, I'll refer to the yarn used for fabric piece A1 as color 1 through color 4, according to their sequence of use. The fabric piece is knitted with circular needles. For specific yarn details, color schemes, and circular needle sizes, please refer to the detail pages and the pattern chart of our product. Let's first get acquainted with the circular needle. It connects 2 straight needles together, so it's quite convenient to use. First, take out color 1. Make a slip knot with the yarn. Leave the yarn tail a bit longer, which will be convenient for weaving in the ends later. Pick up one side of the circular needle with your left hand. Insert the needle into the loop. Slightly tighten it. This is the first stitch, and we consider this stitch as a knit stitch. Hold the other end of the needle with your right hand, as if you were holding a pen. Wrap the yarn tail around your right pinky once. Gently pinch the yarn between your ring finger and middle finger. Place this yarn strand between your index and middle fingers. This is the basic position for knitting with circular needle. Next, place the right needle above the yarn. Insert it from front to back through the loop on the left needle. Use your right index finger to guide the yarn. Yarn over and pull the yarn through. Place the new loop onto the left needle. Don't pull the yarn too tight, or it will be difficult to pick up stitches later. This is the second stitch. Continue casting on. Place the right needle above the yarn tail and insert it from front to back between these 2 stitches. Note: the insertion is between the two loops. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. Slip it onto the left needle. This is the third stitch. Remember, don't make the yarn too tight. It's okay if it's a little loose. Keep casting on down. Insert the needle. Yarn over and pull through. This is the fourth stitch. Let's take a look. Each insertion is between two loops. Continue the cable cast on. Refer to the chart for the specific number of stitches. 5, 6, 7, 'You can see. This is what you have after casting on. This first row doesn't count as a row. Now we'll start the first row. This row is working from the right side. You should read the chart from right to left. The symbols in the chart are all vertical, indicating knit stitches. Start with the first stitch. The right needle goes from front to back, inserting into the first loop. Note, this is the position where you insert into the loop, not between two loops. Yarn over and pull through. At the same time, release the loop on the left needle. The first knit stitch is complete. Continue with the second stitch. Insert into the loop. Yarn over and pull through. The second knit stitch is done. You can see that below the loops there is a V-shaped texture. This is the texture of a knit stitch. Continue knitting in this manner. To finish this row, when you're done, the first row is finished. If the last loop is large, you can gently pull to tighten the beginning tail of the yarn. Proceed to work on the second row. Turn the piece over. This row is worked from the wrong side. You should read the chart from left to right, as it shows the texture of the right side. When working on the wrong side, you will work the opposite stitches of what is shown on the chart. For this row on the chart, there are knit stitch symbols, so you should purl on the wrong side. Place the right needle below the yarn. Insert it from back to front through the loop on the left needle. Yarn over and draw the yarn through. Let the loop off the left needle. And one purl stitch is complete. Continue purl one stitch, inserting from back to front through the loop. Yarn over and draw the yarn through. Let the loop go. The second purl stitch is done. The purl stitch creates a tile-like texture, with a strand of yarn lying across the top. This row is all knit stitch symbols, so you need work them all as purl stitches. Keep going until you finish this row. And the second row is complete. Proceed to work third row. Turn the fabric piece. When working back and forth, each time you start a new row, you need to turn the work piece. I won't repeat this again. This row is worked from the right side. Knit all stitches. And the third row is now completed. At this point, the side of the fabric piece facing us is the right side. The beginning tail of the yarn is in the lower left corner. Proceed to knit the fourth row. This row is worked on the wrong side. Purl all stitches. And you need to switch colors to work the Intarsia pattern. The Intarsia pattern for the same row on each piece is always worked with two colors alternating. Purl one with color 1 first. After completing, take out color 2. The color scheme here is random. The choice of yarn color is not for reference. Leave a tail of about 10 centimeters. Make a knot on color 1. After tightening, pull the knot to the base of color 1. The joining is complete. Leave the yarn tail for joining on the wrong side of the fabric. Leave it for now. Make sure the knot does not show on the right side. For future instances where you need to join new yarn to work Intarsia, or when you run out of yarn and need to join more, you can refer to this demonstration here. I won't repeat this again. Place color 2 on the wrong side of the fabric. Continue knitting 2 with color 1. When you done, knit 1 with color 1 again, and carry along color 2 once. First, place color 2 behind the workpiece. Knit 1 with color 1. After completing, bring color 2 back to the front of the piece. The tension of yarn 2 strand should be moderate. Ensure it aligns evenly with the fabric piece. From now on, I won't repeat this again. Continue knitting 2 with color 1. Refer to the chart and you'll notice that the next 5 stitches are alternated between color 2 and color 1. For stitches of the same color, the distance between adjacent stitches is closer. There's no need to carry the yarn, just switch colors and knit as required. And now we've complete these 5 stitches. From this row downwards, color 2 is no longer need, but you still need to carry along color 2 every 2-3 stitches. Place color 2 in front of the workpiece. Then knit 3 with color 1. Place color 2 behind the workpiece. Knit 1 with color 1. And then bring color 2 back to the front of the workpiece. In this way, we carry along color 2 once more. Continue working in this manner until there are 2 loops left on the left needle. When you reach corresponding position, continue using color 1 for working. Carry along color 2 when working the second to last stitch. Then knit 1 with color 1 to finish. The 4th row is now complete. Proceed to work the 5th row, which is worked on the right side. Knitting all stitches. Start by knitting 4 with color 1. When working the second stitch, you need carry along color 2 once. Place color 2 yarn in front of the piece. Knit the second stitch. After knitting, bring color 2 back behind the piece. Yarn carrying is done. Continue knitting 2 more stitches. The first 4 stitches are now completed. Switch to color 2 and knit 1 next. Once done, switch back to color 1 and knit. Since color 2 is far from the next knitting position, you need to carry it along every 2-3 stitches. When carrying the yarn, place color 2 yarn in front of the piece first. Then knit 1 stitch with color 1. Bring color 2 yarn back behind the piece again. Yarn carrying is complete. Note: in the following knitting process, when you have a large number of consecutive stitches in the same color, you'll need to carry the unused yarn every 2-3 stitches. When you have a small number of consecutive stitches in the same color, there's no need to carry the other yarn. I won't repeat this again. Continue knitting down until there are only 2 loops left on the left needle. You've reached the corresponding position. Work these last 2 stitches. When working the second to last stitch, carry the other yarn once. The 5th row is now complete. Next, I'll show you how to count rows. With the right side of the fabric facing you, you can see columns of V-shaped loops here. The lowest V-shaped loop is from the cast on, which doesn't count as a row. Start counting from the second V-shaped loop. Count how many V-shaped loops are in such a column. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are a total of 4 V-shaped loops in this column. The loops on the circular needle also count as a row, including the loops on the circular needle. There are a total of 5 rows. That's how you count rows. After completing the 5th row, you can lay the fabric piece flat. Measure the width and compare it with the finished product to check the size. If there's a significant difference, you need to adjust your tension and start over. Next, we will work on rows 6 through 8. Refer to the chart and use the corresponding color yarn. Knit all stitches on the right side and purl all stitches on the wrong side, regardless of the side. When working the second stitch and the second to last stitch, you need to carry along the unused yarn. I won't repeat this instruction from now on. Please follow this method. Knit according to the chart until you have 2 loops left on row 8. When you reach the corresponding position, since color 2 will not be used in the next row, you need to fasten off the yarn. There is no need to carry along color 2 when working the second to last stitch. Once done, leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail for color 2 before cutting it off. Make 2 knots with color 1 near the edge of the fabric. Fastening off is complete. For future instances where one color of Intarsia is no longer needed, you can refer to this demonstration. Continue to work the last stitch. Row 8 is now complete. Proceed to work the remaining part of piece A1. The methods are similar to what we've done before. Remember to carry along yarn when as you work. Note: each time you join new yarn, it should be after knitting the first stitch of the corresponding row. The position for breaking yarn is after completing the second to last stitch. You can refer to the previous demonstration. Work the remaining part by yourself. After completion, leave a 10 cm yarn tail for color 1 before cutting it off. The knitting method for piece A1 has now been fully explained. Next, let's learn how to work piece B1. First, let's join the yarn. I'll demonstrate with this small sample. Row numbers are not for reference. Take out color 1 for piece B1. The color choice here is random. Leave about a 10 cm yarn tail and tie 2 knots at the edge of fabric piece A1 where it ends. The yarn join is complete. Leave the tails for now. This is the method for joining yarn. when starting to work the next piece above. After finishing one fabric piece, now we begin working on rows 1 through 8. You can refer to the chart and work them all by yourself. My small sample has already completed row 8. Next, we move on to row 9. We won't be using color 1 for this row, but we will continue using color 1 for the next row. So, we don't need to cut color 1. While working with color 2, remember to carry color 1 along, taking it all the way to the ending position of this row. Row 9 is done. At this point, both yarns are on the left side of the fabric piece. In the future, when encountering a row in fabric piece B1, we're only using color 2, make sure not to cut color 1. Just carry it along as you work. Continue referring to the chart. And complete the remaining part of the piece. The demonstration for piece B1 is now complete. After finishing piece B1, continue working on the remaining part of the first column of pieces. All following the chart. You should work according to the previously demonstrated method, until there's one loop left on the last row of piece B2. I'll continue using this small sample to demonstrate. Once you reach the corresponding position, first, fasten off color 2. Then finish the last stitch. Next, we will use color 1 to bind off on the right side. Knit 2 first. Then lift the first stitch on the left needle over the second stitch. This bound off 1 stitch. Continue knitting 1 stitch. Then lift the first stitch over the next stitch. Repeat this process. Finish binding off the remaining loops. You'll have 1 loop left. Enlarge the loop and remove the needle. Leave about 10 centimeters of yarn before cutting the yarn. Thread the yarn tail through the loop. Pull tight. The bind off is complete. Up to this point, the method for knitting the first column of pieces is finished. Next, we will learn the method for fabric pieces from column 2 to column 6. Let's look at the finished product. The knitting methods for the left 5 columns are identical to the first column. After casting on, work from bottom to top following the chart. Work the corresponding patterns for each piece in sequence. After completing the topmost piece, bind off on the right side. Work in order from left to right. Finish each column in sequence. For piece I. After finishing row 16, you don't need to cut color 2. Just carry color 2 along when working the second stitch of row 17. And the second to last stitch of row 18. Transition it upwards to the next knitting position. There's no need to carry color 2 along for the rest of these rows. After completing row 18, continue working downward following the chart. For pieces K and L, when working the few rows in the middle where color 2 isn't needed, similar to piece I, there's no need to cut color 2. Just carry color 2 along. When work on the stitch close to the color 2 tail position, no need to carry yarn elsewhere. For other pieces, follow the method demonstrated before. Cut the yarn and join at the corresponding position for knitting. You can continue to complete all the pieces by yourself. Once the pieces are done, we will sew them together. I'll use a few solid color swatches to demonstrate the sewing method. Sewing is working on the right side. Take out the first column piece and the second column piece. The first column piece is on the left, with the cast-on side at the bottom. Sew these two adjacent edges together. Cut one long yarn tail. Thread it into the sewing needle. The color using can be random. I've already threaded it here. Start sewing. Find the bottom right corner starting point of the first column piece. The sewing needle goes from bottom to top. Pick the horizontal strand between 2 stitches on the edge. Pull through. Pull the thread outwards. Leave about 10 centimeters of the yarn tail not pulled out. Next, find the lower left corner position of the second column piece. The sewing needle goes from bottom to top. Pick the horizontal strand between 2 stitches on the edge. Pull through. Gently pull to tighten. While pulling, mindfully pinch the reserved tail with your left hand to prevent the tail from being pulled out. Continue picking at the first column piece, just above where you've sewn 1 stitch. Pick the horizontal strand between 2 stitches on the edge. Then pick at the corresponding position on the second column piece. Sew once. These 2 columns of fabric pieces are sewing together by matching them one by one and picking up the horizontal strands. Continue sewing upwards. Keep working all the way to the topmost bind-off position. After each segment is sewn, you need to tighten the tail. While pulling, mindfully pinch the reserved tail. During the sewing process, the first row and the last row of the pattern on the same row piece must align perfectly. You can check if the number of strands in corresponding positions on both fabric pieces is equal. If not, make adjustments promptly. You can pick 2 strands on the side with more strands. And sew them together with 1 strand from the other side. For any subsequent instances where the number of strands is unequal, you can adjust using this method each time. I won't repeat this again. Continue sewing this edge. When you run short of yarn for sewing, when there's about 10 centimeters of yarn tail left, thread the tail to the wrong side of the fabric. Pick up a loop on the backside, tie a knot to secure it. Then take another yarn tail, and continue sewing in the same way. The reserved tail of the new yarn is placed on the wrong side of the fabric. After completing the sewing, take the sewing yarn tail to the wrong side. Tie a knot to secure it. And weave it following the texture to hide it. The reserved tail and the 2 tails from joining and sewing, also finish them in the same way. You can follow demonstration here. Refer to the chart and sew the remaining pieces. This is what the swatch looks like after sewing. The side edges of the column of pieces are the vertical sides of the blanket. The cast-on and end position side of each column of pieces is the horizontal edge of the blanket. The corner where the vertical and horizontal edges meet is the corner of the blanket. Up to this point, the method for making the main part is finished. After completing the main part, move on to work the edging. Let's look at the finished product. The border is knitted around the main body in counterclockwise, picking up stitches continuously in round. In the chart, a horizontal line represents a knit stitch. Here, the pattern is 1 by 1 rib. We will alternate between knitting 1 stitch and purling 1 stitch. To create this texture, the border is knitting in rounds using 2 circular needles, with increase at the corners. The new stitch techniques used include backward loop cast on. Now, let me demonstrate the specific knitting method. I will continue to use this small sample for demonstration. For each round, the chart is read from right to left, and the order of stitching is always the same. First, we will pick up stitches. Picking up stitches doesn't count as a round. Refer to the chart for color schemes. My colors are random here. Take out color 1. Make a slip knot. Leave the yarn tail a bit longer. Wrap the yarn around your right hand. With the right side of the blanket facing you, the edge with the cast on at the top. You can see below the cast on row, there are rows of inverted V-shaped braids. From right to left, find the first braid. At the upper right corner of the second fabric piece, take out the circular needle. Insert it into the center of the braid. Pick up the loop tied with a knot. Adjust the size of the loop. Don't bring the knotted part to the right side. This is the first stitch. Next, insert the needle into the center of the adjacent braid on the left side. Yarn over and pick up the loop. This is the second stitch. Continue in this way. Pick up each corresponding stitch on this fabric piece. Refer to the pattern chart for the number of stitches to pick up. You can check the number of stitches as you pick them up. Now at the sewing position, pick up one more stitch. Near the upper edge of the sewing position. Continue picking up the center of the braid and the stitch above the sewing position until you finish remaining stitch of this edge. Now we're at the corner. At this point, there should be one braid left on the horizontal edge. Take a yarn tail about 10 centimeters long. Fold it in half and tie a knot at the end. Place it on the right needle as a marker. Continue by picking up one stitch in the last braid. This stitch is the one picked up for the corner of the blanket. Now we're at the vertical edge of the blanket. The beginning of this edge might be a bit tricky to pick up. You can pull out part of the circular needle. Then insert the hook into the edge loops to pick up stitches. The first stitch is now picked up. Continue with the method of picking up one stitch per loop. Pick up 4 more stitches. Then skip one loop. Start from the next loop. Pick up 5 stitches evenly. Continue down using the method of picking up 5 stitches for every 6 braids. The total number of stitches picked up along the vertical edge should match the pattern. Note that the stitch corresponding to the corner is not included. The total number of stitches picked up along the vertical edge should be an odd number. You can check the number of stitches as you pick up. You can adjust the pickup stitch position at any time according to the total stitch count. This is how you adjust the number of stitches picked up along the vertical edge. Finish picking up stitches along this vertical side. After picking up a certain number of stitches, you can pull the circular needle back through the loops. Continue picking up stitches. When you're done, place a marker on the right needle. Then, at the horizontal edge, below the bind-off braid, pick up a stitch in the center of the rightmost V-shaped braid as the first stitch for the corner. Next, pick up stitches evenly in the center of each V-shaped braid below the bind-off braid. Refer to the chart for the number of stitches to pick up on each fabric piece. Also, pick up 1 stitch at the same sewing position. Follow this pattern as you continue to pick up stitches until you reach the left side of the first column of fabric pieces. There's still 1 V-shaped braid left. After completing it, place a marker on the right needle. In the last braid, pick up the stitch for the corner. Picking up stitches along this horizontal edge is now complete. Continue picking up stitches downward. The method and number of stitches for picking up along this vertical edge are identical to the other one. Just follow the previous demonstration for picking up stitches. Once completed, place a marker and pick up the remaining part of the horizontal edge from the cast on. Still, start by place a marker. Then in the first loop, pick up the stitch for the corner. Then, following the method demonstrated earlier, pick up the rest stitches of the edge. This is what it looks like after picking up all the stitches. Place the picked up loops in the middle of the circular needle. In actual work with a larger number of stitches, be mindful not to drop any stitches at either end. I won't repeat this again. Now we'll begin knitting the first round. Take out another circular needle. For this round, we'll switch colors to work the Intarsia pattern. Take out color 2 and join the yarn. Place the tip of the circular needle, with the yarn tail on the left side, in your left hand. Place the other circular needle in your right hand. First, bring color 2 over the front of the needle. And knit 1 using color 2. Then, return color 2 back the needle. Switch to color 1 and purl 1 stitch. Note: the strands of color 1 behind the fabric piece should be above color 2. Next, switch back to color 2 and knit 1 stitch. Bring the yarn over the front of the needle. After completing, bring the yarn back. Continue down, alternating between color 2 and color 1, to work stitches in purl 1 and knit 1. This technique is known as 1-by-1 ribbing. Before each time you use color 2 to knit, make sure to bring the yarn over the front of the needle first. Once done, bring the yarn back again, or you'll end up with extra stitches. On the back of the fabric piece, color 1 should always be above color 2. Repeat this process. Continue working until you reach the right side of the stitch next to the marker on the blanket corner. When you get to the corresponding position, next stitch is the symbol for 1 backward loop cast on. Place color 2 under your right index finger and make a loop clockwise. Pull this loop over the top and onto the right hand needle from below. Slightly tighten. That's the backward loop cast on. Then move the maker onto the right needle. Knit 1 with color 1 at the corner position. Follow with 1 backward loop cast on using color 2. Wrap the yarn around your right index finger, place the loop onto the right needle. The increases for this corner are done. Next, continue working 1-by-1 rib, by alternating between color 2 and color 1. Use color 2 to work 1 backward loop cast on at the corner positions. After completing the first backward loop cast on each corner, move the maker again. Repeat this process and finish this round. This is what it looks like after the first round is complete. Now, move on to work the second round. For this round, color is no longer needed. You need to join color 3 instead. Knit this round using the circular needle that's not on the fabric piece. First, fasten off color 2, then, join color 3 onto color 1. Next, purl 1 with color 3. Switch back to color 1 and knit 1 stitch. For this round, we will work 1 by 1 rib. By alternating between color 3 and color 1, you can match the texture from the previous round. The next stitch is a knit stitch texture. Knit it. Purl if it's a purl stitch texture. No increases are needed for this round. Continue working this round following the same pattern. Note that after knitting the stitch before the marker, don't forget to move the marker. This is what it looks like after finishing round 2. Continue knitting down. For each subsequent round in the remaining section, you'll need to break the yarn and join new yarn. The method is the same as demonstrated when starting round 2. And increases are needed at the corners for remaining rounds. The method is identical to the first round. Refer to the previous demonstration for guidance. Knit them all by yourself. I will continue using this small sample to demonstrate bind off. The border is on the right side. I will use color 1 to bind off. The method is the same as bind off stitches after completing a row of the fabric piece. Before beginning, you need to cut the yarn that isn't being worked. Then bind it off using the method explained before. When there's only one loop left, leave about 10 centimeters of yarn tail. When cutting the yarn, enlarge the loop. Pull the yarn tail through the loop and tighten. Thread the yarn tail onto the needle. Insert into the position of the loop on the left side. Insert again from the position of the yarn tail. Tighten. That's how you secure the yarn tail. Pick up loops with the remaining yarn tail on the wrong side. Tie a knot, secure it, and weave it following the fabric's texture. That completes the border. Next, let's learn how to make embroidery decorations. Please look at the finished product. Some sections of the fabric piece require V-stitch color block decorations. Different colors of yarn are used for embroidery in different positions. The specific locations for embroidery and the yarn schemes are marked on the pattern chart. I'll use this solid colored small sample to demonstrate the embroidery method. The embroidery position isn't for reference. You can watch my demonstration first, then embroider according to the pattern. First, use the corresponding color thread to thread the sewing needle. Note: the embroidery yarn should not exceed 1 meter. If it's too long, it's inconvenient to embroider. If it's too short, you need to join yarn frequently. Before embroidering, let's get to know the fabric piece. This V-shaped braid is 1 stitch, corresponding to each small square on the diagram. In the actual work, you can determine the embroidery position based on the pattern. I'll use the color block at the center position of motif M as an example to demonstrate the embroidery method. Embroider 5 stitches from right to left at the corresponding position. Thread the needle out from the middle position just below the corresponding braid. Leave a yarn tail of about 10 centimeters on the wrong side. Next, following the texture of this braid, insert the sewing needle like this from right to left. Pull the yarn through. Then insert it again from the position where you just came out below. In this way, a stitch is embroidered. Continue to embroider the adjacent stitch on the left side. First, thread the needle out. From the middle position just below the corresponding braid. Following the texture, insert the needle from right to left above. Then thread it back to the first insertion. The second stitch is now complete. Continue to embroider the remaining 3 stitches. Each time you embroider, emerge from the center position below the corresponding braid. Insert the needle following the texture above. Then thread it back to the starting lower position. The yarn tail on the wrong side can be weave in as you embroider, or you can weave in later. Note: when embroidering, be careful. Don't embroider the wrong row. The embroidered yarn shouldn't be too loose or too tight. If it's too loose or too tight, make adjustments in time. You can use the needle to adjust like this. The 5 stitches in this row are now embroidered. Continue to embroider 3 stitches in the row below to prevent the yarn from being carried too far on the wrong side. This row can be embroidered from left to right. Embroider the first stitch on the left side first. Similarly, find the center position under this stitch braid. Thread out the needle from here. Note: since it's being embroidered from left to right, therefore, the next step is also following the texture of the braid. Inserting the needle from left to right. Then back down to the lower position. Like this. The first stitch on the left side is completed. Following the same method, continue to embroider the rest of the row moving to the right. This entire row is worked with the needle insert from left to right. In this way, the second row is now embroidered. Next, follow these steps to finish embroidering the remaining part of this color block. The first color block is now complete. At this point, if the yarn tail is very short, you can directly tie a knot on the backside and secure it well. Then pick up the new yarn to continue embroidering. If the yarn tail is still quite long, you can continue without breaking the yarn. And proceed to embroider nearby sections of the same color. When transitioning the same color yarn to a distant position, you can hide a few stitches on the wrong side. Then follow the texture to transition to the next area that needs embroidering. For shorter distances, you can simply carry the yarn over and start embroidering. Each time you pick up the new yarn, don't make it too long or too short, as too long can be inconvenient for embroidering, and too short will result in more yarn tails. After referring to the pattern and embroidering all the color blocks, hide all the yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric by following the texture. That concludes the method for making the embroidery. Lastly, we will sew the lining onto the wrong side of the blanket. Before sewing, you should wash and iron the lining fabric from the kit to remove any excess dye and to prevent subsequent shrinkage. Then, press the blanket to set its shape on the wrong side, and then sew them together. I'll demonstrate the sewing method with this small sample. Place the blanket with the wrong side facing up and lay it flat. Position the sewing lines between the column pieces horizontally. Lay the lining fabric over the blanket. The lining fabric should cover the entire blanket. In the actual work, the blanket is larger, so to make sewing more convenient, you can pin the lining fabric and the blanket in place first. If you don't have pins, you can use safety pins instead. When you are doing this, be sure to secure many more positions. After securing, trim the lining first. There are no specific requirements for the cutting position, as long as the edges of the lining fabric are at least 3 centimeters longer than the first round of the border. Once trimming is done, sew the seams where each column of fabric pieces connects between the lining and the blanket. Finally, sew the lining with the border. We will use the backstitch to sew the middle part. First, fold the corresponding lining of the horizontal edge inward along the edge of the edging. Make the edge of the lining roughly even with the first round of the border. Thread a sewing needle with a length of thread. Tie a knot at the end of the thread. Insert the needle near the border of any column of fabric pieces at the sewing position. The needle goes through the loop once, where the thread end is knotted. Pull tight to secure the thread end. Fold the edge of the lining neatly. Then come out from the position near the border on the lining. From the right side of this insertion point, insert the needle about 0.5 cm away. Pick up the sewing thread of the fabric piece and come out on the left side. There should be a gap of about 2 cm between the exit and the insertion point. When sewing, mind not to prick your hands with the pins. Don't let the sewing thread show on the front side of the blanket, or it will affect the appearance of the blanket. After slightly tightening it, continue to insert the needle about 0.5 cm to the right of the insertion point. Pick up the sewing thread of the fabric piece and come out at the position about 2 cm to the left of the previous insertion point. Gently pull to tighten. Repeat this process. Finish sewing the entire sewing line of this fabric piece. While sewing, make sure the lining is laid flat over the blanket. Adjust the position as you sew to prevent sewing crooked. If the thread isn't long enough, you can bring it out from the wrong side. Pick up a loop on the fabric and tie a knot to secure it. Then take new thread and continue sewing in the same way. After sewing to the left near the border, fold the lining fabric edge inward on this side as well. Aligning the edge with the first round of the border. Continue sewing. Then take the sewing needle to the wrong side. Pick up a loop on the blanket, tie a knot to secure it. And trim the excess yarn. In this way, one seam of the blanket is sewn onto the lining fabric. Repeat this process to sew the remaining sections of the fabric piece onto the lining fabric. After the middle part is sewn together, we will sew around the lining and the border. Cut a length of sewing thread and insert it into the sewing needle and tie a knot at the end of the thread. Start sewing near the crosswise edge first. Secure the yarn tail on the wrong side of the blanket, close to the border. Then begin sewing. Here we use the whip stitch method. Insert the needle into the remaining loops after picking up stitches on the fabric piece and the corresponding position on the lining edge. Then exit. Slightly tighten. Skip a little distance and insert into the remaining loops at the picking up stitches. And the corresponding position on the lining edge. Sew again. Repeat this process to sew down. Finish sewing this side. Before reaching the corner, fold the edge of the next side lining inward neatly. Continue sewing. Adjust the position while sewing. Mind not to sew it crooked. For the corner, the insertion distance can be slightly closer. To sew it more snugly, continue using this method to finish sewing this round. After completing, you can follow the picking up stitches position along the border to secure and weave in the ends. This is the method for sewing on the lining. To make the blanket flatter, you can iron the blanket on the backside to set its shape again. Up to this point, the method for making this blanket has been fully explained. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website, Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. We will see you next episode.